Friday.
I think we will get started.
So do you guys have?
Oh, no, I work year round, so I
It's
oversee
2
all the
o'clock,
principals in the district.
and we have 1
And so I work
hour,
all year round, and so we're about to jump
and we
in.
really have about 5 hours
My
for
bad.
discussion. So we're gonna click along, but I think we're introducing such an important topic. So welcome, everyone, on this beautiful day. I know you were probably working in your gardens all weekend, so you're delighted to be inside, sitting down. This is Mitzvah Day, as you know, the second day. And as I understand it, Mitzvah began in Akron in 2002 and has grown every year. So it's really a community-focused service event. And in addition to the projects out in the field and projects in the different rooms here, we thought this is a wonderful discussion for all of us to be having. And I think we'll start just with a brief prayer by Kathy Ress.
You're going to say who you are at some point? Okay.
No, it's a secret.
Dear Lord, thank you so much for the privilege of bringing my concerns to you. Thank you that your mercies are new every morning and your faithfulness never ends. Today, I pray for my child's success. Please help him or her to grow in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. In your mercy, we pray for you to provide opportunities for learning so that through education, children find the hope and skills for a better future. We pray, Lord, for every child who struggles with learning, and we ask you to make learning easy for them. We pray you would make the materials and lessons presented to them clear and concise. Lord, we ask for the joy of learning to be restored to students who are discouraged by their progress. Restore hope in situations where academic success appears to be out of reach. We ask that you give every teacher the wisdom and foresight to recognize the needs and potential of each individual student. Lord, we pray for the emotional, physical, and mental well-being of all students and educational employees. And we ask you to restore the passion, excitement, and joy of teaching and learning among faculty and others, students. There it is. Amen.
Amen. So that is Kathy Ress, who is just known throughout the community for so many things, a founding member of the Akron area immigrant AAIA, and as well as, of course, her mental health work, and she's just known about town. I think you all knew her when you walked in. I'm Connie Dubik. I am a Catholic, Dominican associate, which is a layperson of peace, and interfaith through and through. Colleagues who know me, if you've sat in any meeting where I've been one of the administrators, know that there's a theory that I pull up frequently, and it's from Cornell University, and it's called What? So what? Now what? And I think that's what we're going to try to do in one short hour today, is look at some things on what the problem is and what the situation is. So what? And then now what? Because we're moving toward an action thinking by the end of the hour. So there's 3 people here. They're just the prime movers and shakers. And again, just like you know Kathy, you probably know 3 folks, but I'll introduce them anyhow. Dr. Elizabeth Hessler, who we all know from many organizations. Dr. Hessler is originally from Youngstown, Ohio. She has degrees in psychology and education from Kent State, nearly 40 years with the Akron Public Schools, where she was a teacher, a counselor, a principal, a psychologist, and director of special education. After retiring, which she hasn't done yet, really, but 14 more years followed as director of the upper school at Gilmore Academy, an accredited independent Catholic school located in Gates Mills, Ohio. Her community volunteer work includes the Akron Interfaith Council, Habitat for Humanity, and the Akron Canton Food Bank. A frequent speaker on the new curriculum for colleges and professionals and government organizations throughout the United States. She was nominated for Who's Who in American Women. That's our Dr. Elizabeth Benson. Sitting next to, yes. Is Steve Franz, who was originally from Massillon, Ohio, a BA in 1966 from Kent State, the Flashes, majoring in pre-law, 4 years in Air Force as an aircraft maintenance officer, and during a career in magazine publishing, published several business-to-business magazines for Akron-based publishing houses. First with Babcock Publications as publisher of two automotive aftermarket magazines, and finally with Crane Communications in Akron as a founding publisher of the environmental magazine, Waste and Recycling News. He was a board member and commodore of the Portage Lake Yacht Club, where he organized and ran the club's first junior Learn to Sail camp. So there's something else we could get involved in.
Anybody want to learn how to sail?
And finally, Ken Perkins. Oh, he came in quietly. Ken has a 40-year career, and you know, we're all so young, I can't believe we have all these years. Has a 40-year career in manufacturing sales and corporate management, and currently works in manufacturing consulting. He has served on several board roles, including the United Way's Community Impact Task Force, and is the former board president for Big Brothers Big Sisters of Summit and Medina counties, where he was also a mentor. He has also volunteered as a tutor in Akron schools. Ken has a bachelor's degree in business administration. So get ready, folks, to open your minds to the discussion and conversation we're going to have. So I think we'll start with Steve.
Okay, well, good afternoon. I want to start briefly reviewing some of the data that underscores how important learning to read at the third grade level is. First of all, Gallup poll estimates that low levels of adult literacy could be costing the U.S. as much as $2.2 trillion a year. The National Assessment of Education Program, NAEP, announced that in 2022, only 33% of fourth graders were proficient in reading. Eighth graders were even worse, only 31% were proficient. And according to the U.S. Department of Education, 54% of U.S. adults 16 to 74 years old, that's about 130 million people, lack proficiency in literacy, reading below the equivalent of a sixth grade level. The Department of Justice states the link between academic failure and delinquency, violence, and crime is well into reading failure. Students who cannot read at the third grade level are 4 times more likely not to graduate from high school. High school dropouts make up 90% of Americans on welfare, 90%. 75% of Americans who receive food stamps perform at the lowest 2 levels of literacy. 70% of all incarcerated adults cannot read at the third grade level. Only 40% of Ohio students entering the 4th grade can read at the third grade level. U.S. students rank among the world's best and worst readers. The best do as well as anyone in the world. The gap between America's best and worst readers is wider than any other country in the world. And that's according to results from the OECD, that's the Organization of Economic Cooperation and Development's Program for International Student Assessment. The PISA study revealed that 12% of US 15-year-olds scored at the top 10% of the international sample, but 18% of US PISA test takers scored at or below the lowest performance level on the exam. And here in Akron, those are the people that we really want to try and help. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Elizabeth?
If I ask you, to give an indication of how familiar you are with this huge problem. A third of America's third graders not reading at grade level. How many of you would say that you're pretty familiar with this? Yeah, it's, I thought there would be more in this group. If we went out, all of us, beginning tomorrow, and began to survey our friends, our doctors, I'm talking about people we may know, even casually. If we ask them, politicians, educators, professional people, non-professional people, how much of this data are they familiar with? What would you say? What might they say? Right. Most of the people, and I'm not talking about uneducated people, I'm talking about people maybe that you went to school with, that you worked with, that you see occasionally, they know very little of this. Now, if I asked you, how much do you know about the new budget? What might you say? The United States new budget? Not much, huh? And what would you say about most of our friends? Or people we talk to? How much do they know? Well, it surprises me that this group didn't have a bigger response to knowing a lot about that. Now, I've been reading that budget because I'm wanting to know what of education source did they cut out, or what of educational source did they add in? And so far, what do you think the answer is?
Cutting out education.
Very little on education, either what we're wasting money with or what we're ignoring. So our small task force looked at a plan, and I'm going to get a general response from you about the plan. There are really 4 parts. The first part I just talked to you about, and that is how aware of the fact that a half of the third graders at 2 schools that I know of don't read at third grade level. Now, the second question, or the second description of what this task force, hopefully all of you are going to be part of this, is we are very fortunate that our governor has taken the position that every school has to use the reading program, the phonetic reading program. And at this point, I don't know, but I'm sure our Akron representative could help us know just how many of our teachers, grade 1 through 7 or 8, know how to teach phonics. My guess is there are several that do. My further guess is there are many that do not. Now, I also know that the person who should know most about it are the principals. The principal ought to know what phonetics is. The principal ought to be a leader. Now, maybe my friend from the Akron Board of Education won't agree with this, but I see many principals who can do that, and I see just as many who cannot. So, should the system then hire people to make the principals knowledgeable about phonetics? Once that problem is solved, then there ought to be some pretty good goals set for the teachers who are teaching, who are using phonetics, in terms of how much growth do they have. And at this point, should we hire some Akron U people, or maybe some of you would like to do this as volunteers, that you become helpful at knowing those 8th graders. Now, the next part of that is, and I think this is interesting. If we hire tutors for every elementary school, now every elementary school, many elementary schools have tutors. How many elementary schools do we have?
28.
Of those, how many would have tutors?
They all have tutors.
Okay. What would you say the skill of those tutors?
It all depends on if they're a tutor that's gone through traditional schooling, educational schooling, or if they're a tutor that is a sub-tutor that may not have an educational background. But we always make sure that everyone's trained with delivering and implementing whatever the curriculum is.
And that needs to be attended to in terms of how do we help them all grow? You know, first of all our friends and professionals to know more about how important 8-year-olds reading at 3rd grade level. Now, I know some of you are, have I gone over my time?
Well, you're laying out the challenge to us, which is good. So,
End it, okay.
but this will be continued later on, so.
Okay, 2 articles in the paper that would be good for you to be familiar with. Many of you are. The first one was the New York Times in terms of how they're transforming reading. I think it's interesting that the biggest group of kids are in schools are in New York. And they take it serious at this point. That surprises me. The next one was Mississippi, and I was just as surprised at the Mississippi report. I have thought of Mississippi as the lowest functioning state, both in terms of reading and in terms of manufacturing and consuming. And it is still there. Guess where their 3rd graders are in reading? Better than Ohio? Worse than Ohio?
Worse.
Better
You're
than
kidding.
Ohio. This democracy, well, we spend $2,000 per child on education. That's about how much is spent in Ohio. Mississippi, with probably the lowest economic success level, way better than that. And they took the problem seriously. They thought it was important to do this in Mississippi. I guess I'm going to want to read more about Mississippi. Thank you for listening. I think the most important thing I want you to do is decide whether you can work on this task force. And when this task force is done, there's going to be another one. I've also got another idea to deal with. And I'm sure you don't want to hear it. Thank you for listening.
Ken, did you want to insert anything at this point?
How much time do I have?
Oh,
3 minutes.
a minute or
3
two.
minutes. Well, just a couple things. I have to just introduce myself to this young lady because I haven't met her before in my work with the Board of Education. Ken
Angela
Rogan.
Carter.
Nice to see you. How many people here are citizens of Akron? Okay.
Citizens or citizens of?
Residents.
Residents, I'm sorry, residents of Akron, I should have said, yeah. So,
Oh,
well, you know, today, the reason I asked that question is that the leaders in the clubhouse, so to speak, as far as poor performance in probably most of the metrics of education is the city of Akron. As it relates to reading, Akron is number 1, I believe Barberton is number 2, and Springfield Township, I believe, is number 3. And correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Carter, but we're about, system-wide, we're about 40%, maybe 41% as far as 3rd grade proficiency, right?
I don't know, we just got our preliminary test scores back for this school year, and I'd have to look, but I think we're in either the high 40s or low 50s. So I'd have to look at our preliminary scores that we just got back.
Okay. Well, the concept of, you know, what's being done today, there's a tremendous amount of moving parts, and I've been trying to be, you know, very active within Akron Public Schools. I actually filed for the open board seat that was just filled last week or 2 weeks ago, I guess, and did not make it to that final chair. But the point is that, you know, in my opinion, I think relative to what we have going here today, you know, I think we're doing a really, you know, a very magnificent job with all the dynamics of running a school system in Akron. The point about the tutoring and the reading, in my opinion, this is all money related. And I would ask any of you who are residents of Akron as to whether or not you would actually be willing to open up your pocketbook to additional enhancements in dollars that are going to our educational system, specifically in the city of Akron. But one of the issues that we face right now, even though the federal government is in the process of distributing what are called the ESSER funds, some of you may have read about that, but the school district, APS, has approximately, I think it was $90 or $92 million on ESSER funds that they have been in the process of spending. That's good news. The bad news is the federal government, in their infinite wisdom, has decided that school system has to spend all those dollars by September of 2024. So one of the things that we're working on right now is to see whether or not we can convince the federal government to extend, you know, the distribution portion of that. And I've been working a little bit with Mary Outley and her team, as well as some of the people on the board, you know, to make that happen through Congresswoman Sykes and Senator Brown. And that's a critical issue, because my personal opinion is, if we're really going to solve this problem as far as third grade reading goes, we need more individualized instruction. And guess what? More individualized instruction is going to cost a lot of money. And the system right now is hamstrung by a lack of money. We're still dealing with issues pertaining to the capital expansion. We have a couple more schools that have to be built. But truth be told, you know, if you folks have followed the progress of the capital expansion in the last 17 years of all the CLCs that have been built, if we would have started that project today, many of those schools wouldn't even have been built in the locations that they were built. And that is how quickly the demographics of this city has changed. We have over an abundance of classroom capacity right now, to the tune of almost 30 to 35%, I believe. The North Cluster is packed to the gills. So we have capacity elsewhere in the system on these new buildings, but we don't have capacity at North, and that's the next thing that's going to be dealt with. But to summarize, really, this is an issue about money and the resources that are going to be needed. I mean, I think our teachers have done a magnificent job. They're in the transition phase to moving into the science of reading and the use of phonics, which Elizabeth had just alluded to. But it's going to take a lot more. I personally am extremely impatient. I'm not really interested in hearing about a goal of 3 to 4% per year improvement on any metric of our educational process. But that's just me. I wish other people were a lot more impatient, or than I am, to try to make this kind of thing happen. So the only other thing I want to say is I have to make sure that everybody is aware that my passion for early childhood education is directly as a result of this lady right here. She happens to be my mother-in-law. And that is her daughter, my wife, over there. But she's driven me over the last number of years to really be involved in what's important. I personally don't think there's anything more, if you look at causes of problems in our community, I'm a manufacturing guy, and I look at root causes. If you have a defect in a part that you produce, it's a root cause that you need to find out, so you eliminate further application of the defect, right? Well, if you look at some of the societal ills that we have today, and you drive back and you ask the question why 5 times, and take any one of these defects in our society, ask the question why 5 times, you're gonna come down to the basic form of education. And this 3rd grade reading does not get any more basic than that, truly.
You know, I might tell you that Ken and I don't always agree.
Rarely.
And we still are related to each other.
You have a question over here?
Yeah, just a background question.
Yeah.
So prior to Governor DeWine's request or recommendation that phonics is taught, are the class of 2023, the teachers, the new teachers coming out, what was their curriculum like? Were they in early childhood education? Was phonics something that they were trained to do? Is that's on their?
You know, we're moving, is that something you can answer?
I don't know, specifically how they teach reading at the college level. We are in communication with our surrounding, University of Akron and Kent State University, where we do touch base as relates to if they're on the right track as it, with the, content and the education that they're providing to our college graduates. And, they're pretty much in alignment with what the expectations are because, I can't remember how long ago, but as of, well, probably like 2017. So as of 2017, all those teachers who come out of a traditional educational program within Ohio are 3rd grade reading guarantee certified, meaning they can teach kindergarten through 3rd grade, and specifically 3rd grade, because in order to teach 3rd grade, you have to be 3GG, which means you have to have certain credentials and have gone through a certain specific type of education with teaching reading in order to teach 3rd grade. So when 3GG came into effect, we had a lot of teachers who were 3rd grade teachers who had to go back to school to either get their master's in reading or they had to take so many modules as it relates to the implementation of teaching reading. The district had a way for them to get credentialed to be 3GG, but now every student that comes out of a school in Ohio from 2017 on is now able to teach 3rd grade. And so science of reading is something that all of our kindergarten and 1st grade teachers receive this school year. And next year, our 2nd and 3rd grade teachers will receive the science of reading. It's called letters training, it's dyslexia training. We have a principal that's one of our lead principals that has received an extensive amount of dyslexia training as it relates to being our liaison between the district and at the state level. Oh, you showed me, she was in the newspaper today, LaMonica Davis. She's our person, and all of our elementary principals receive the same training that our K-1 teachers receive, because in order for you to know if the implementation of what has been learned in professional development, you have to know what that learning is as well. And so not only do the K through 3rd grade teachers have to take this letters training, but the administrators have to take the training as well and have to pass the test to get their certificate to say, I'm letters trained, which is basically the science of reading training, which focuses on phonics.
Perfect. Kathy, why don't you give just a brief introduction of Angela?
Okay, we have three
Because
other
we're leading right into the question.
people here who have multiple experiences. Angela Carter. Angela is with the Akron Public Schools, Interim Executive Director of Elementary Education, Turnaround Specialist, Department of Elementary Education. Experienced principal with a demonstrated history of working in the educational management industry. Skilled in program evaluation, lesson planning, educational technology, instructional design, and volunteer management. Strong educational professional with MS, focused on educational administration from the University of Akron and BS degree from Tennessee State. So that is Angela. Our other panelists will be 2 others. Jill Redmond, Jill is over there, okay. Jill is Akron Summit County Public Library System, graduated from Kent State University with a degree in secondary education in French, also a master's degree in French pedagogy and master's of library science from Kent State. 4 years as a French teacher at Our Lady of the Elms, 19 years as a school library media specialist in the Parma City Schools, and 6 years early childhood librarian in the Akron Summit County Public Library System. She is currently working at the Highland Square branch. And lastly, but not least, Celeste Tannenbaum. Celeste is a mentor advocates, helping to support I Care, which means creating authentic relational energy with Red Oak Behavioral Health, as well as school districts, partners, mentors, mentees, families, etc., who are participants in the I Care program. Celeste is an experienced educator looking to work outside of the classroom. She utilizes her relational and organizational strengths in a varied background in formal and informal educational settings. Celeste is skilled in curriculum development and building strong relationships with individuals from diverse backgrounds.
So this was purposeful to have a team that could respond to some of the issues that are brought up. So Angela, did you want to say anything further from your point of view?
Well, as relates to some of the things that we're doing now within Akron Public Schools with preparing our children to be successful readers, and it really starts at the pre-K level, like even before our scholars come into school. So just encouraging our families to put their students in Head Start programs. If you're in daycare, make sure they have a curriculum, ask to see their curriculum, and just educating our parents on what needs to happen before they even enter into kindergarten. And then when they come to kindergarten, and they're in kindergarten and first grade, one of the things that affects reading would be attendance. And so one of the issues that we're battling right now is the chronic absenteeism with some of our K-1-2 scholars within the Akron Public Schools districts. And so just explaining to parents that kindergarten is not, it's not daycare. Kindergarten, we expect our children to read in kindergarten. But in order for them to get the learning that they need to be at school. And so, attendance, one, we need to address attendance to make sure that our scholars are coming to school. And then two, when they're in school, one of the things that we're doing is we get to know who our scholars are right away. And so they receive a diagnostic reading assessment as soon as they enter school so that we can learn where their deficiencies are and we can start addressing those right away. And one of the interventions that we use within the district is phonics for reading. It's Virginia Phonics. I can't remember the specific name, the exact name of it, but it's a real prescribed program that has proven and has shown results. And this is the first year that we've used it. And so we're hoping to see a trend of continued progress with the implementation, as long as that we're, using fidelity with the implementation and making sure that we're using this high dose tutoring with students who need it. And then we have Akron After School program as well that helps with providing services for our students that may be behind. And then of course our summer curriculum as well. And I was speaking with someone earlier about how we do have people who come into our building to help with supporting some of the individualized tutoring with our students. And so we do partner with University of Akron, where we have University of Akron students who come in and volunteer. We have several buildings who have community partners, and with their community partners, they help with providing services within the school building as well, like the chapel is connected with several different schools throughout the district. Said University of Akron, we have Akron Hope, which is a part of the Well CDC, who goes in and helps with organizing volunteer tutors for Mason and for Helen Arnold. And there's other agencies around the district too that partner with different buildings. But I think the important part is just making sure that we're identifying those students and addressing those needs. And then not only that, but we contribute 135 minutes to reading. So if you're a kindergarten through third grade student, 135 minutes is contributed to just ELA, English Language Arts instruction. And we also got a new curriculum that's aligned with the science of reading, also being culturally responsive. And so we're hoping that we're going to start seeing an increased amount of results with the implementation of some of the initiatives that we have around our K through literacy and learning initiatives.
Wow, thank you, and that fills in and opens up a whole area that we need to know more about and study. Who are some colleagues that are working with you? Is there one sitting next to me?
Oh, we do a lot of things with the Akron Public Schools Library.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, we have our outreach visits too. We go to daycares, preschools, and schools. So we try to go on a regular basis to reinforce what's going on in the classroom. But one thing we've been doing too is we're trying more to get the parents involved right away with library card sign up. We're encouraging parents to sign the children up very early for a library card, and there's different flyers and things over there. Please feel free to take. So September is library card sign up month, and so that's a big push every September. But we push all the time. But that's the month I go out to a lot of places and I'll be, hey, you can come in and get a library card. And so I explain to the kids and try to build up enthusiasm, and then they come in. And we have the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten initiative now, and I don't even know if anybody talked to you about that, but I've been promoting this. So you can start the minute your baby's born, and you can sign up for this program, and you just, if you read 1,000 books before kindergarten, you keep a little log, you get various little incentive prizes, and we take your picture with your child if you want. We'll put it on our Helen Square Facebook page. And then at the end you get a book, but there's various, like there's a patch and there's some bookmarks and various little toys and little things too, posters and things for the kids to keep them motivated. So that's one initiative that's new. And Laura McFalls, I don't know if you know her, she does a lot with, she'll bring in-service to us about literacy and training and school readiness and those programs. But many of the librarians work with the local school district school readiness committees. So that's another for the third grade reading guarantee and getting it, that helps with that if the kid's already ready to start reading when they get into kindergarten. So that was something I was involved in more when I was at the Talmadge branch, but that's another initiative, that school readiness. So we also offer baby time, so from 3 months on up, if we have a specific program for that age group. We focus on giving parents literacy tips, encouraging the parents, explaining, and then we do a lot with board books and movement and nursery rhymes, because I've been told that children don't know the traditional nursery rhymes, and that's one way that a lot of kids learn about language, is that rhyming. And we give out, so I brought a little, this is for our new parents, so whenever we see a baby come in with a parent, we'll say, did someone give you the baby book, the little yellow bag full of goodies? And if they say no, we hurry up and go to the cupboard and we get one of these out. So every person will receive a nice little board book. And then there's various information in here about the 1,000 books before kindergarten and the 16 success, ready for success traits. And that's over there too. And we encourage the parents to go over these. Our library locations and hours. And we also offer a new thing too, dial a story for children, and we were really pushing this during lockdown and pandemic. So the child could call up, this is for older children of course, and be able to listen to some fun stories, and we had a wide variety, and we still do that one. So I talked about the library card. Oh, and a lot of you know about this, but don't forget about Dolly Parton's Imagination Library, because that's a free book every month, and so we're really promoting that, and I'm sure you are at the schools too. But I love my school visits. I mean, I go a lot to King Learning Center, and it's fabulous. I mean, that school's amazing. So here's milestones of early literacy development. So we try to incorporate these practices in our story times and our baby times. And then we have our regular other programming. So here's about My Body and Soul, our summer reading. Sign up starts on tomorrow. Tomorrow we're having an ice cream social, so we're trying to get parents to come in and sign up children. You can sign up in person or online. And every day you read or do physical activity, just keep a little log, very simple. And then various steps, you receive an incentive prize. And a lot of people are competitive, get the t-shirts every year because they're really nice. There's different pretty colors. And then the children get a nice hardback book at the end, a popular book. We pick, things for interest, a wide variety of things. So if you haven't ever done our summer reading, please sign up. And you also there's various raffles and fun things. So it gets pretty competitive sometimes. And then our Monday performers are there every Monday till the end of July. We have somebody fun. So we're starting off with Outback Ray. So he's coming out on June 12th. So we always keep the same day and time for our performers so people kind of know. And then we encourage people to take out books afterwards. And so we have wonderful collections, and we are trying to drum up more business, as I call it. But yeah, so we have a great lineup this summer. And if you don't live near my library, yours will have performers also. And then here's our events. So this comes out, it's online too. Miss Maley, who I work with, we've designed a play lab experience for young children. It's designed for ages 2 to 5, so that they're doing all kinds of sensory play, imaginative play. And everything's free, of course, at the library, and then we have programs for adults too. So right now I'm doing stories and stretches with kids, with yoga stories and movement, so it's a lot of fun. So we're just trying to build more connections, but it just seems like there's not enough hours in the day to get everything done sometimes. But please take any of the things I have out. I have book lists and so forth, and stop in. I make up book lists all the time, so I have reading lists of books I recommend for the school-age kids. So, any questions?
And we can come for ice cream tomorrow?
Yes, at 2 o'clock, we got treats. People love food.
Jill,
Yes,
I'm Janice, we never met. I retired from the library in 2021.
I've never met you.
Yeah, we have not met, but I worked in legal reference, so I never worked with children. But what I want to point out is that there was so much concern during the pandemic that kids would fall behind.
Yes.
But the library really was at the forefront. I really admired your department, system-wide.
You can't believe some
During
of
the
the people.
pandemic, even though you can't say you didn't have access to books because the buildings were closed at one point early on, but the children's librarians would walk books out to the curb and give the parents the books. So there was access. There's also story time. If you log on to a computer, it was reading to you. Instead of watching television, the kids could have listened to a librarian.
Yeah, we had the Zoom story time.
Yeah.
Yes.
So we had books going out to the curb if people really made the effort to go pick them up. You had story time, and something else I really admire is reading to the dogs.
Oh, yes,
The
the
pause for
therapy
reading. So
dogs.
if kids-
Pause for reading, we call
If
it.
kids are struggling in school and they might be embarrassed to read in class, I remember 60 years ago when I was in school, we had those reading groups and you had to read, the kids were watching you and laughing at you or whatever. But the library, and I think it's all the branches, all locations.
We
most
don't have one at
locations.
ours. I did at Talmadge.
Oh, okay, but May and I went to see the dogs.
Because they have to train the dogs and get a certification. I'd love to get one at Highland Square though.
Like I remember this one dog came and he was like 3 legs. He was naked, but he was still coming into the building. And the kids could read, the dogs aren't judgmental. I think that they can read for up to they sit for up to 20 minutes or something like that.
Yeah, and we have sign-ups too.
Yeah. So there are a lot of programs that
And we also have to use book sales too. And Highland Square, I just love our community because we put out often a free cart because we know that sometimes people just don't have any kind of extra income or they're going through a hard time. So we try to put some free things out, books, so that even if and we rehab cards a lot. We try to, does everyone understand what that means? So if you have a big fine, sometimes you cannot take out items and that breaks our heart. So we try to rehab the cards so you can start off with a fresh slate because it always punishes the kids.
Liz, what did you want to add?
Well, I want to thank Janice for bringing up the pause for reading,
Yeah.
because that is absolutely spectacular, what it can do for a slow, reluctant reader. And, I'm a retired librarian, so I have this thing, and the rest of this is the spectacular stuff that library does, but those are parents who bring the kid
Yes.
and work on it we've got a heck of a lot of parents who can't read, and we've got that stumbling block, and what are we gonna do about that piece of it?
Well, there is a solution.
All right, let me,
Project Learn of Summit County on the lower level. If I'm correct, I believe that I Promise program through the LeBron James Foundation, it pays the, there's an orientation fee or whatnot for parents of Akron Public School students to obtain their GED and also improve their reading skills. So that's an adult literacy program conveniently at downtown library on the lower level. So they can go in during the day while their kids at school and they can learn too. I think the resources are there. I don't think we need to reinvent any kind of wheel.
well,
It's just getting the word out.
and that's what this group will be charged to do with after today's program. But speaking of the other resources, maybe we can have Celeste talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, so hi, I'm Celeste Tannenbaum. I work with iCare Mentoring. We are actually in almost all of the APS schools doing one-on-one school-based mentoring. And so I think that this is a problem that we need to really address on so many different levels. There's funding levels, there's curriculum levels, there's libraries, but also there's just the one-on-one. And so the program I work with really is working with individual students one-on-one to help address what's going on for them. So we're a school-based mentoring program as opposed to something like Big Brothers Big Sisters, which pulls kids out of, from their homes out to go out somewhere in the community. We don't do that, we push into schools instead. And so we're really all about relationships. So CARE is creating authentic relational energy, and we're really about creating these strong intergenerational relationships because many people nowadays don't even know our neighbors, and so this is really a chance to have another supportive person in your life beyond your teacher or beyond your grown-ups at home or whoever else there is in your life. And so we're really about building these strong relationships, creating this good support network there, really building kids up and helping them learn how to set goals and how to achieve what it is they set after. So we work with K through 12 students, and we're not a tutoring program. So I think, why are we here if we're not a tutoring program? But actually what's pretty cool is that we get evaluated each year by the Summit Educational Initiative, which is a nonprofit that evaluates other nonprofits in our county. And so they really help to make sure that nonprofits and educational settings are doing things that are effective. And so what's pretty cool actually is as they evaluate our program and as they really do the research on the test scores and that kind of things of our kids in APS, we're actually able to see still increases in their reading and math scores. And I have copies of the reports with me if anyone's curious to look at later. But I think that's pretty amazing is that, in addition to things like curriculum or having more access to books or all these other things that are important, actually just having a strong, stable person in your life helps with that too. And also, our students then have less disciplinary action and better attendance, which we're saying is so important for sure. And so it's really something that we need to be supporting kids from all these different places. And this is just yet another way that anyone here could get involved and become a mentor for students there. And so really that's what my position is getting out in the community and trying to get community members to come into schools to really partner with APS and really be able to support the amazing work that the teachers and the principals and everyone there is doing. And so based on those things, I was trying to think about specifically, it says in here, relationship-based ways to promote reading in youth. So I was trying to think about what are ways that folks here who aren't necessarily educators, who aren't necessarily, going to reform a whole system, what are things just you could do as an individual with youth you're in a relationship with? So a couple of, and I should say my background, I taught for about 10 years, both preschool and elementary school, and so this is kind of coming from all those places too, but some things that I was thinking about in that relational-based ways to promote reading is, some of that is that creating that literacy-rich environment, which the libraries are so good at doing, and helping really make sure there's books around students, helping to encourage them, to get books they're excited about. If there's, neighbors in your life or grandkids, helping to connect them to some of those resources here. I recently heard someone say that Akron as a whole is resource-rich, but collaboration-poor. Like, we have great resources here. Some of that we need to do is actually just helping draw those lines there. But actually, the one thing I really wanted to think about the most is, sorry, not trying to block you, I was just trying to hold my paper down, is really letting kids know that we all love reading. And that's something that is really important, is that, as a society, I think we don't often read in front of kids. And that's like, it seems so simple, but children want to be like us. And so, you know, even if that means like reading, sitting on your porch, reading a book, and the neighbor kid walks by, oh, what are you reading? And showing it to them and talking about it. Or, you know, if you're going to the beach or the park with your grandkids, bringing books for them and books for yourself. And that's one simple little thing, but actually is really powerful in terms of kids wanting to be like us and kind of getting that spark going. You know, children are born curious and they're born passionate, and so often, you know, they lose a lot of that by our, by school systems that are inequitable, or by, you know, not having the resources they need and feeling discouraged. And so really trying to lift them up and trying to still kind of encourage that spark there is something that's just really vital. So yeah, I mean, so, you know, part of the end of this eventually is getting this invitation to action. So one action I want to invite everyone here to is to consider becoming a mentor. I have some flyers out here. I have business cards. I have, you can give me your email address if you're interested, or helping to connect other folks in the area. We're here mostly talking about Akron, but we actually also are in Barberton, Talmadge, and Cuyahoga Falls, if those are more convenient places for you. But we always need more mentors, and I think any way that we're getting more adults from the community invested in our schools, this is just one way of doing that. Any way of doing that is powerful. So even if it's not with our program, finding a way to get into the schools to be supporting the work that, you know, people like Ms. Carter are doing and the folks on the ground is just really vital. And so that's just what my initial invitation to action for all of us here.
Wow. I mean, didn't we have the perfect grouping here? Did you want to make a summary remark?
Well, there are some summary remarks. First of all, right after this is over with, there's going to be another forum on violence here in Akron. And I encourage you all to go to that if you can. But a reminder, and I think you're all aware of this, is that the seeds for violence often start early on in a kid's life. The inability to read, and that makes this program of early education incredibly important. Elizabeth and I support a program of developing a task force here in Akron. Mayor Horgan a couple of years ago had a task force on violence, and I thought at the time that the task force should have been on reading, because that's often the seed of violence later on. So we're going to suggest and promote a task force made up of educators, community leaders, political leaders here in Akron, with the express purpose of setting up and establishing and developing a program that will reach these young children that are at risk. I see you nodding your head on that. And developing a way for us to help them get beyond that. I don't have the answers for that. I think that's the job of the task force, to come up with those answers. And not only to come up with the answers, but also to figure out how in the devil we're going to finance this, because it's going to cost us some money, as you know, as Ken has mentioned many times. So I'd like to end it with this. If you think that the task force would be a good way for us to begin the program for addressing learning with at-risk youngsters, contact your council person. Mention it to your friends. Write letters. Call the mayor. You know, we've got a new mayor coming up here at the end of this year. But the real thing is we've got to raise the level of awareness here in this town of what this problem is, and we think that the task force, especially if it's headed by the mayor, would be a good way for us to start.
What? So what? Now what? And I think we've moved into that movement. Do you have any other comments, panel people, or other questions that you might have? We have 5 minutes or so.
Yes.
Glenn.
I
I'm just sitting here being very excited because I would like to volunteer, but there are so many. Is there any way of generating a list of all the ways I could volunteer?
Well, you know, one of the reasons we take this is we want to be able to replay it and gather all the ideas and let you guys show it to other people too. And we had a sign-in sheet with emails because we wanted to gather people's names and be able to send you some things. So we'll be in touch with you because I think to reconvene this group sometime, I mean, look at the energy and the experience from all angles. So I appreciate that, and just make sure you're on the list, and maybe we can talk as we leave it. Other comments or questions? Yes.
Hi, I'm a school psychology student at Kent State and a previous tutor at Copley Fairlawn City Schools. And I was briefly involved in the dyslexia training at Copley Fairlawn. And I personally, and I understand that other educators in the program might agree with me, thought that the program was very difficult. So how do we, I do not come from an educational background, how do we make it so easy for people to get this training on phonics, on dyslexia, to help individuals who have problems reading or who have dyslexia?
How do you get the training?
Well, so it's like real research based, and it's the school part of learning like the brain function and how the brain works with reading and all that. But then actually putting it into action, we adopted Hegarty, which is actually the way that phonics is taught. And so it's real explicit, and so we use that. And then again, I talked about the Virginia phonics for reading. It's real explicit. And so just making sure that the district or the school adopts a curriculum that is going to help with that has the science behind the implementation of the teaching of the phonics. And so that's one thing that we made sure that we did within Akron. We use Hegarty. We have one school that uses Niehaus, and that's Helen Arnold, but they're going to be switching over to Hegarty. It's the same thing, it's just different names. Different names for the phonics program.
So maybe you could also be in touch with Angela later.
Well, I think, are you asking if there's like any books or manuals that you could learn at home?
I guess since the dyslexia laws are so new, how do we make it a stepwise, like step by step? Let's make it easier for educators to get the right certification so that they can come into the classrooms ready to tackle any problem that the student is dealing with. Because it's like trying to go from 0 to 10. I mean, what are the steps? How do we make this easy for people to do? People are busy with their schedules. How do we make it easier for them to get training and to succeed? And I've experienced a lot of support from my school district, but I just want to mention that it's not easy to do this, and how do we make it easier for people? And how do we become advocates for learning and for reading? And make sure that people understand and parents understand the importance of reading. Because a lot of parents don't think it's important to teach their kids to read. So how does that change in our communities?
Yes.
This Trevor mentioned pre-K or kindergarten readiness. Universal pre-K is an item that this community needs to reckon with. Once again, that's a pocketbook related issue. I don't think there's anything more important that we can do than to establish a mandatory universal pre-K program in this city. That's number one. Number two, nothing was mentioned that I've heard about the summer enrichment ideas that are going on. Summer slump is a huge issue that we face, especially in the lower socioeconomic strata of our city. And there's a lot being done with that right now. One of our recently retired assistant superintendents is working as a contract consultant with being paid by both United Way and the GAR Foundation to enhance the summer enrichment needs of this community. And this is a huge proposition that's going to have to be dealt with as well. And A natural progression into that would be a change in the schedule of our schools to get rid of the summer slump and continue learning and take advantage of the intensive investment that we've made in buildings, through the summer months, and actually increase our learning time. So those are some more key issues too that are being considered.
All right, I could sit here the rest of the day, you may stay if you like, but we will be in touch, so make sure you're on the list that we get an email. We have some handouts that Steve has for us.
Those are the statistics that I mentioned earlier. There are about a half a dozen of those, if anybody wants to pick up one. I've got one for you.
Yeah, those statistics we posted.
Right. I'm sorry?
Email attachment?
Yeah.
Yes, that's
Should I send it to you?
After the gun, there's a dinner, I don't know if they all know about that.
So we want to include, you're like the kids, talk the minute the teacher, it's okay. I know somebody wants to go to gun violence, and then there is the potluck dinner that we're all invited to, and I'm staying because I miss lunch. So please do what you can do, and thank you so much. This was a great meeting.